Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session on how to analyze your property's financials. Start off with the legal disclaimer. I'm not an attorney, accountant, economist, or financial advisor. Any information I provide is not a promise of returns. Everybody's responsible for doing their own due diligence and research about investing, knowing that all investing has risks. So if you need to talk to someone like a financial advisor or CPA to make decisions, I encourage you to do that. If you're interested in investment opportunities, come talk to me. Part of it is to determine what type of properties you're interested in based on your goals and your risk tolerance. I also have to follow certain legal SEC rules about advertising. So please come talk to me. A little bit about me. I'm from East Oakland, grew up in a low-income neighborhood, and that encouraged me to focus on how can I improve communities through real estate development. I ended up working for the government where I invested in both new construction and the rehab of affordable apartment buildings. I funded 40 projects worth over $1 billion. I was also an asset manager of 4,000 apartments, both affordable and market rate. And that helped me get experience doing higher level management. The property manager is on site dealing with tenants and maintenance. The asset manager oversees the property manager and makes important decisions about when to sell, when to refinance, how to get the property cash flowing, when is it time to raise rents, different strategic things about the property. I invested in my own small rentals in California, Phoenix, and Florida. I'm a licensed California real estate broker, and I currently find and analyze apartment deals for myself and other investors. So I want to do a recap and progress report every time just so we don't forget what we learned. And the main thing is your goal. Whatever your goal is going to determine what type of property you buy. If you need immediate cash flow, you need to buy at a place where it's cheap and the rents and incomes make sense, where you can get that immediate cash flow, which is why some people are buying outside of the Bay Area right now. Or you can buy something that has low rents and you're able to improve it, rehab it, get the rents up, and start collecting cash flow immediately. If you need to retire and you want an asset that's going to give you income later, you don't need it right now, you can wait and pay down the mortgage and refinance or sell it later. That's a different strategy. If you need tax breaks, that's another way. And then you may want to have a place for your family to buy. Maybe you buy a small apartment and each person occupies a unit. That makes more sense than everybody buying their own house. Or you may want to leave something as an inheritance. You don't really need it right now. It's for your heirs. The education part is critical. You need to learn as much as you can. And some people are asking me, should I buy this, or is this a good thing to buy? And I don't know. It depends on your risk and your goals and your plan. I can only give you information and facts on how to do your own due diligence. And I know feels like Karate Kid. Why am I painting fences and waxing cars? I just want to go to the fight. But this is the education, the fundamentals, where you can learn before just jumping in and buying a property, which is the easiest way if you're going to skip over all that to get hurt financially and make a mistake. So get educated, stick with it, and make your own decisions. Learn to think for yourself. If you don't have money saved to invest, time to start saving. You need to build relationships and deal with trust issues because you need your team to be able to invest in any significant way. You need your legal person, your accountant, your broker, the person who's going to rehab it, the person who's going to manage it for you. And we do that by networking, meeting people, finding people in the industry that are good and are trustworthy. And then sharing information. I share information with people because I'm trying to help and I'm trying to build a network. People share information with me. It helps me and builds my network. And together we can take advantage of opportunities if we know they're out there. So share information. I always encourage people to bring their kids if they're old enough to sit and listen, because that's how generational wealth is built. It starts with the young kids that are taught how to invest. They're taught how to do business. And once they're older, they're not scared. They don't waste a lot of time thinking. They just go right into it because they're already have an understanding of how it works. I know we have significant trust issues because of our past and everything we've been through, but without being able to work with people and partner with people, you're not going to go very far in investing. It's not any different for apartment investing as it is for any other type of major venture. So I'm committed to working together with people and finding good people to work with. I'm committed in being a good person to work with. That includes being reliable, doing what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it, which is why I do not do CP time. I've made a commitment to start at a certain time, and I do that. I respect the people who came at that time, the time that they will never get back. I'm also very big on transparency. Anything that I do, I want to be totally open about what I'm doing. If it's investment opportunity, I'm going to be open about the money, the time, the legal documents, and everything will be available for people to see and ask me questions about. So today's topic is why even analyze the financials of the property? Well, it'll help you figure out all the main things you need to understand to make a decision, like what your rents are going to be, what are your non-rental income, like laundry and parking, what is that going to be? It'll help you determine your operating expenses, your capital expenditures, like any rehab, help you figure out your loan amount and your mortgage, and then your rate of return. And all that's going to help you make a buy, no buy decision. And if you are going to buy, it's going to tell you what purchase price. And then you also have to have an exit strategy, even before you buy. That will determine the plan for your property and help you know when to execute that plan and when you've executed that plan based on your holding time. So the questions you need to be able to answer are, do I want to buy this property? If yes, what's the max purchase price? What are my soft costs? And soft costs are things like the fees you pay to the lender, the title and escrow fees, which is title and escrow is a third-party company that handles all the legal documents and all the money for both the seller and the buyer. How much is my insurance? How much is my taxes? And then what are my hard costs, which is the cost to buy the building or the land, and my major capital expenditures like a new roof, foundation, HVAC. And then you need to know what's my annual cash flow, how long do I want to keep the property, what are my annual returns, what are my total returns, and how much I can afford to pay my investors. So there are 4 types of budgets. One is an acquisition budget. There's a capital expenditures budget, which we call CapEx. If you're doing ground up new construction, there's a development budget, which includes both the acquisition cost and the major capital that you need to spend. And then there's an operating or cash flow budget, which is a long-term budget that shows the income, expenses, and net cash flow of the property when you're operating it. So the acquisition budget includes the cost of the building, the loan costs, the fees to pay your lender if you have a loan, title and escrow fees, and all your inspections. And if you're buying something, you have to inspect every unit. You have to inspect the grounds, all the major systems. If you're getting a loan, and you should anyway, get an appraisal. And then due diligence items like environmental. If you think that you have any environmental concerns, like say the property used to be on a gas station or it's near a waste plant, you need to have a company come in and check and see if you need to remediate anything environmentally so that you don't have any negative impacts on the tenants. And then relocation. If you have a property, you want to move tenants out that are maybe paying low rent and bring in higher paying tenants, you need to have relocation in your budget. If you're in a place like California and certain cities in California that have rules about how and when you can relocate a tenant and make them move. You may have to pay $10,000 a unit. You may have to pay $50,000 a unit. You also have to pay lawyer fees to help you get through that process legally. And then operating reserves are a rainy day fund that will help you cover expenses if you need them. So it's 6 months of expenses plus the mortgage. Capital expenditure budget, also called CapEx, is when you need money to renovate interiors, replace major systems like the roof, the HVAC, the foundation, the siding, the plumbing, electrical, big ticket items, major landscaping, and any additions that you want to do. If you want to add laundry rooms, a clubhouse, washer and dryer hookups, or if you want to put a pool in. And then the development budget for new construction includes the price to buy the land or the building if you're going to buy something and tear it down. Soft costs, which include the cost to pay your architect to do up plans, your engineers to do their plans. You have to pay the city permits. You have to do all your due diligence reports like appraisal and your inspections. You got to pay your lender their costs, not only the fees that they charge, but your interest during construction. And then the hard costs, the cost to do site development, which are roads, parking, foundation, and then the cost to build the building. So the operating cash flow budget is the budget that you're going to have the longest because it's going to be with you while you operate the property. It's one that you look at the most frequent. I would say look at it at least once a month so you can check to see where you are. It includes the income, and most of your income is going to come from the rents that the tenants pay. You also have a vacancy rate, which is a percent of the rental income, and it's shown as a negative number. Even if the property is 100% occupied, you always put a vacancy rate because at some point somebody's going to leave, and during that time you're not going to get paid. Also, there is such a thing called an economic vacancy where there are people living there, but they are not paying you what they owe you. So the impact is as if they weren't there and you have a vacancy. So you always need to include it. You find out what that is by looking at the seller's financials. If you get 3 years of financials, you can kind of see on average what it's been. Or if it's a new development or the seller doesn't have any financials, you can look at what the neighborhood and the market is going for. Around here in the Bay Area, it's about 5% on average. And then you include your other income. If you have laundry, if you have parking that you charge, and the other thing is called ratio utility billing system, also called RUBS, which is way you can charge the tenants a portion of the utilities. If all the utilities are in your name, maybe the whole property is on one meter, you pay for everything. You figure out a way to allocate a portion of those utilities to each tenant, whether it's based on household size or number of bedrooms. You figure out a way that's fair, and then you charge that on top of their rent. So you add all that up, and that equals the effective gross income, also called the EGI. And then you have the operating expenses, which I'll go over in a minute, which are also called OPEX. And then you figure out the net operating income, or NOI. And that's figured out by taking the EGI minus the operating expenses. If you have a loan, you're going to pay debt service. And in residential, it's called a mortgage. But here it's called debt service because it only includes the principal and interest of the loan. The property taxes and the insurance are included in the operating expenses. And then you have replacement reserves, which is money you put aside in a fund to replace things that are expensive that are going to break down, like a roof or major rehabs, carpet, things like that eventually wear out, appliances, anything that relates to electrical, plumbing. These all have a lifespan, and eventually you're going to have to fix or replace these. $250 a unit per year for a new construction project is a good number. If you're buying a property and you don't do significant rehab, you need to put higher because you haven't fixed everything up front. So eventually those things are going to wear out faster, so you just need to replace those sooner. And so your cash flow is what you have left after you pay all these things. After you pay your operating expenses, your mortgage or your debt service, and your replacement reserves. So I'm going to have a class assignment. It's easy to listen to me talk, but it really doesn't get in your brain unless you do it. And for some people, this is new, so it's good to just try to go through it and think through it. So I'm giving you an example. You have the rents at $100,000, a vacancy rate of $5,000, laundry $3,000, and parking $3,000 of income. Figure out what the EGI is, and then I've also given you the operating expenses of $45,000. Figure out what the NOI is. So I'll give everyone a minute to do that. Okay, so this is the answer. You take your rents of $100,000 and then you subtract your vacancy, so you end up with $95,000. You add back in the income you get from laundry and parking, and that gives you an EGI of $101,000. Then you subtract your operating expenses of $45,000, and that leaves you with an NOI of $56,000. So your operating expenses are the cost to operate the building. And these are the major line items that you need to have budgeted for. So you have maintenance and repairs. Figure that out by looking at the previous owner's financials. They should be keeping track of this. If they don't, just budget 3 to 5% of the income. Property management costs are usually a percentage of the rental income, and the more units you have, the lower that percentage is because you're getting more income. So it's usually 4 to 6% if you have 40 units or more, 6 to 8% if you have 20 to 40 units, and then 10% if you have less than 10 units. And then it's negotiable, of course. But the concept is that they're going to charge you more if you have less units because they're still doing the same amount of work and the income is less. You also have administration and payroll, which is for the bigger properties. If you have an on-site property manager that has an office, then you have to pay for their cost. You have to pay for the payroll taxes associated with that. You have legal, and then you have contracts, which are regular cost that you've signed a contract for someone to do on a regular basis, like maintain the pool, check the elevators, do landscaping, regular pest control, things like that. And that's about 5% of the income. And then you have insurance and property taxes. This includes rent control fees, but does not include income taxes. Utilities and trash, which is whatever it is. And then advertising, 0.5% approximately. And then if you want to be really hands-off, you need to hire an asset manager. The property manager can only do so much. If there's a big decision about something that needs to be fixed, or someone needs to be taken to court, or someone's trying to sue you, or should we raise rents, or should we sell, the property manager doesn't do any of that. They're going to go to the owner. So if you don't want to answer those questions and deal with that, which they come up on a regular basis, you need to hire someone who's going to represent you as the owner, called the asset manager, to make those decisions, and watch the property manager to make sure they're doing their job. And if not, then you need to replace them. And the asset management fees are about 2 to 4% of the EGI. And then you have the replacement reserves, which are about $250 per unit per year. If you have a rehab, or if you have a type of property where the residents are harder on the property, like if you have a apartment that has families and a lot of kids or students, you need to have a higher replacement reserves because they will make things wear out faster because of how they treat the property. Okay, so your rate of return. This is the ultimate thing that you're trying to figure out. Is it even worth it for me to buy this building? This will help you determine the risk versus your reward. Usually the higher the risk, the higher return you need. It's affected by time, which we call the time value of money. So in an example, if I gave you a choice of either I can give you $95 right now, or I can give you $100 4 years from now. I'm going to take the $95 right now because I can reinvest that money, get that back, reinvest it again, get it back plus my profit, reinvest it again. I have more opportunities right now if I get it working for me. If I have to wait 4 years from now, I've lost all type of opportunities. That money's not even worth as much in the future. So it helps you also compare to other opportunities, what your opportunity costs. If you buy this property, you're giving up the right to use that same money to buy something else. So you need to weigh all your options. And it helps you determine both the cash amount that you're going to get and the percentage rate of return. So your opportunity costs are to help you understand what else you could be doing with this money. You want to make the best decision out of all the opportunities of investment that you have. It'll help you determine, can I get a better return somewhere else? And so when you decide to invest in a property, you're going to look at that property and maybe another property, and can I do better with the stock? Can I do better with the business opportunity? All these are your different opportunities. So there are several rate of return calculations, and we do all of these to look at the different angles. They're all telling you something different. So you have cap rates, equity multiple, cash on cash or annual yield, internal rate of return or IRR, return on equity, ROE, and cash accumulation. So if any of these numbers are negative or the equity multiple is less than 1, it means you lost money. capitalization rate, or the cap rate, is calculated by taking the first year NOI and dividing it by the purchase price of the building. So this is telling you what your rate of return is if you paid all cash. You had no loan, no mortgage. And this is most useful for comparing properties to each other or trying to figure out what's going on in the market. So you hear cap rates a lot when it relates to commercial properties, when brokers that are listing property are selling it, or appraisers, they use this a lot to try to figure out what's the value of a property. And the lower the cap rate, the higher the prices. So here's a couple of examples. If you had a property A that had an NOI of $400,000 and the listing price was $4 million, you take the $400,000 and you divide by $4 million, that gives you a cap rate of 10%. So what this is saying is you're making 10% on your investment. You pay $4 million, you're getting $400,000 in cash flow, and you're making 10% in that first year. The other way to look at it is try to figure out, okay, what should I pay for this property given what's going on in this market? So if you had that same NOI at $400,000 and cap rates for similar properties are 5%, you take the $400,000, you divide it by 5%, and you come up with a value of $8 million. So because these cap rates for this example are lower, that means you're paying a higher price. And if you think about it the opposite way, if I pay more for the same income, that means I'm getting a lower rate of return. An equity multiple is telling you how many times you turned your money. And so you calculate it by figuring out all the cash that comes back to you from the property, and you compare that to the money you put in. So an equity multiple of 2 means you doubled your money. So in this example, if you put $500,000 in, and then after 5 years you got $1 million back, you take $1 million, you divide by $500,000, and that gives you an equity multiple of 2x. We always put an X to show how much you're multiplying your money. So in this case, you doubled your money. If the equity multiple is 3, it means you tripled your money. If it was 1.5, it means you got your money back plus 50%. If it's 0.9, that means you got less than what you invested. You lost money. The cash on cash annual yield you take by figuring out all the cash flow, all the income you got from rents, and you subtract all your expenses and the mortgage, the money that you actually have left. And then you divide that by your original cash investment. And this is telling you what your rate of return is on an annual basis. And it's going to fluctuate annually because your rents and your expenses are not going to be the same every year. If you plan on putting rent increases every year or having operating expenses that are going to change for whatever reason, you're doing a rehab or something like that, then it's going to change. It's not going to be the same. So you look at it every year. And this is a simple cash flow budget. It's over 5 years. And it's showing the income and the expenses and the actual cash you have left after you pay off everything. So in year 1, the EGI, which is the effective gross income, that's all your rents and all your other income minus your vacancy. I didn't put all the other things here. I'm just trying to simplify it. But in this year 1, it's $100,000. You subtract $42,000 of operating expenses. That leaves you with an NOI of $58,000. Then you have your debt service, which is your principal and interest of $20,000. That doesn't change in this example. That's going to be the same until you pay it off, and then you won't have anything. And then there's also a line item for a mortgage payoff. So in year 1, we're not paying any extra down on the principal. You subtract all of your expenses from your EGI plus your mortgage or your debt service, and you have a cash flow of $38,000. You take that $38,000 and you divide by your cash investment of $500,000, and that's going to give you 7.6%. So you made 7.6% on your $500,000 in year 1. You do that same calculation in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now in this example, in year 5, it's projecting that we're going to sell the property, we're going to pay off the mortgage of $300,000, and we're going to end up with $735,000. So that makes the cash on cash yield 147%, because you took that 735, you divided by 500,000, and that's what you ended up with. So anytime it's over 100%, That means you, in that year, you got more than what you invested. So the internal rate of return, or the IRR, we use that to understand what the average annual return is. And we do it in Excel. And we look at the cash flow as a positive number. So year 1 through 5, they're positive because it's money coming in. And we look at the money you invested as a negative number. It's money going out. So in Excel, you go into a cell, you put equals, put IRR, that will bring up the IRR function, and then you just highlight all the numbers going across. So negative $500,000 is cell B24, and then $735,000 is G24. Then it calculates all the numbers in between. So this IRR in this example was 13%. So what that's telling you is you got your original $500,000 back, plus an average of 13% of that $500,000 every year. You didn't get 13% every year, obviously, because all these numbers are different. All the cash flow is different. It's just an average. And if the IRR is negative, that means you didn't get your money back. You lost money. And if the IRR is going to be higher, the sooner you can get your money back, because then you can take that money and invest it. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So here are different scenarios that show what happens to the internal rate of return based on when you get money. It's always the time value of money that's very important. Not just how much you're getting, not just the percent you're getting, but when you're getting it. So I took that $735,000 that was in year 5 because we sold it, and I just moved it to year 4 in this first example. Say we were able to refi and get that money out. If we were to do that, the IRR goes up to 16%. In the second example, we're going to get the money in year 3. That makes the internal rate of return 21%. In the third example, we're going to get it in year 2. That makes the IRR go up to 30%. And then if somehow we were able to get that big chunk of money right away in year 1, you would get a 58% internal rate of return. So what that's telling me is that the sooner I get my money, the sooner I have an opportunity to invest in something else. I can churn my money, which I'm constantly making it work. It's in, I'm getting my return, it's out, I'm reinvesting again. I can keep doing that, and I can grow my money by compounding it a lot faster. The other thing that you need to understand when dealing with investors is that there is a perception that the further out you are getting money, or the further out you have to wait, there's more uncertainty. And with more uncertainty comes more risk. And I say it's a perception because we can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. So if I got my money back tomorrow, if I thought I was going to get it back tomorrow and something happens, an earthquake, I can get wiped out financially. There's no guarantee I'm going to get it back tomorrow. And I can't control what's going to happen tomorrow any more than I can control what's going to happen in 20 years. But if you're trying to promote your investment, understand that that's how people think. They would rather be in and be out quickly. They feel safer if their money is back, so they can then have a choice to reinvest if they want. But if it's tied up for a long time, some people don't like that, and they get nervous. So if you are presenting a deal, of course, don't say that you're going to double your money in a year if that's not the case. If it's a 5-year hold, it's a 5-year hold. But you might have to align yourself with people who are okay with that. They can wait. For them, the risk is worth it, or the perceived risk is worth it. They don't need it for emergency money, things like that. Return on equity, ROE, it's all of your cash flows minus your cash investment, and then you take that number and divide by your original cash investment. And you take all the sum of your cash flows, which includes all the money you're getting from rents, and all the money you get from refis, and all the money you get from sales proceeds. It's all the cash that you get in your hand. So in this example, we're using the same numbers. You're going to invest $500,000, and at the end of that 5-year hold period, you're going to end up with $883,000. You take that $883, subtract your original $500,000, and that leaves you with $383,000 of profit. Take that number, divide by $500,000, which is what you originally invested. That gives you 0.76 or 76.6%. This is saying that you got your original $500,000 back, plus another 76% of your $500,000. Again, if this is negative, you lost money. And the way this compares or is different than the cash on cash annual yield or the internal rate of return is that those numbers are annual. That's telling you what you're making on an annual basis. This is a total. That's the difference. And then cash accumulation. This is just a total amount of money that you grew your cash to, just the same as if you put it in a bank account and you let it grow, or you bought a stock and it appreciated over time. So same example, you put in 500,000, it grew to $883,000 in 5 years. So I know some people are feeling overwhelmed, especially if you're not used to looking at all these numbers and are saying this is too much. Why don't we just choose one? Let's just choose one, the rate of return. So all of these properties have the same return on equity, 10%. Property A is you're investing $1,000, you're getting $1,100 back. Property B, $10,000, you're getting $11,000 back. Property C, $100,000, you're getting $110,000 back. And in property D, you invested $1 million and got $1.1 million back. But the rate of return, as far as the IRR, is different, and the hold periods are different. So for property A, you are only keeping it for 2 years. Your money's only tied up for 2 years. You're getting 2% in the first year, and your IRR is 5%, which is higher than the other ones because you don't have to wait as long. But you're only getting $100. Now, I'm not going to spend my time looking at a deal, doing research just for $100. Maybe it's worth it for some people. It depends. Maybe if you put it in a CD and you don't have to think too much about it and it's safe, maybe. But that's the thing you have to decide if it's worth it. So property B, you're getting a higher percent in that first year. You're getting 8%, and your IRR is 3% because you're holding it for 3 years. And then the other property C and D, you have to wait longer. You're not getting as much in that first year, but you are getting bigger amounts. So what the rate of return analysis is telling you is what percent on an annual basis and a total basis, how long my money is going to be invested, and then what's the actual dollar amount I have to invest and that I'm going to get back. So I want to talk about leverage for a second. Leverage helps you multiply your efforts. It helps you do what you can't do by yourself. And this is a picture of a guy. He's using a pulley, which is a type of leverage, to pick up this concrete block. Normally, something that might take 20 people to pick up, but he's able to do it with this one tool. Debt is a type of leverage. It helps people buy what they can't afford, helps people buy more, and ultimately helps people get higher returns. So this is an example of where it helps you buy what you can't afford. If you were to buy an apartment that costs $500,000 and you only had $100,000 in cash, you can use $400,000 to get a loan. So I want to go through an example to compare your profits and what happens if you buy with a loan or you buy cash, all cash. So this is an all cash buy. You buy that same apartment. It's $500,000. You didn't buy it, take out a loan. Your rents are $30,000 a year. Your expenses are $14,000. That leaves you with $16,000 in cash flow. Your first year cash on cash yield is calculated by taking the $16,000 and dividing by $500,000. That's the cash you put in. And that equals 3.2%. So that's the percentage you made on your money in that first year. Assuming that it appreciates over 5 years at 4%, it's going to be worth $608,000 in 5 years. So if you bought with a loan, same property, $500,000, but you only put down $300,000 and you borrowed the other $200,000, the rents, expenses are still the same, but now you have a mortgage of $12,000, and that leaves you with only $4,000 in cash flow. You take that $4,000, divide by $300,000, which is the cash you put in, you get your first year's cash on cash yield of 1.33%. So the cash on cash is comparing the cash that you get to the cash you put in. So we're not going to divide by the whole $500,000 because you didn't pay all cash for it. Same thing, it's going to appreciate in 5 years and end up with a value of $608,000. So say you took the other $200,000 of cash and you bought another property. This cost $300,000. You put down 200, you borrowed 100. The rents are going to be less, so it's going to be 15,000, and you have expenses of 6,000, and you have a mortgage of 6,000. The 3,000 in cash flow, you're going to divide that by your $200,000 of cash, and that's going to give you a 1.5% rate, your cash on cash yield for that first year. And this property also is going to appreciate over 5 years at 4%, and so it'll be worth $364,000. So to compare the leverage, no leverage purchases that you made, you can see what happens. The first property, you didn't use a leverage, also called a loan. You spent $500,000 all cash. You have 3.2% on that first year, and then you have a property that's worth $608,000 after 5 years. The other side shows that you have two properties totaling $800,000 that you spent. You spent your same $500,000 in cash, and you have a slightly lower cash on cash return that first year of 2.83%. But you have two assets that combined are now worth $972,000. That, if you were to sell it, you have more profit. But also, if you don't sell it and you wait, you're going to pay down that mortgage, you're going to refi, and eventually you're going to have higher cash flow and higher yields. So that's all I have for today. Any questions? Okay. So here's the data that I want to share with people. This is where you can find information. This is the education that I'm continually encouraging people to go understand more and more. Listen to it as much as you can so it could stick. More education resources, and then here's some educational events. These are investment groups or real investors where you can network with people, build relationships, but also learn from them and their experiences. And then here's some future topics. We can always add to this if people want more information, but the next one is going to be how to find your properties. And then we're also going to talk about how to pool money legally, how to get a loan, all your due diligence, going through escrow, how to hire and know what the property manager is doing. What about asset manager and how to hire an asset manager, how to go through rehab, 1031 exchanges, and appraisals. So the next meeting is how to find properties. It's going to be Saturday, November 9th from 3 to 5 in the library in the Learning Center building. Thank you very much.